Hello and welcome to Hong Kong Business Owners. I'm Carmen, founder of this podcast that shares inspiring stories from entrepreneurs based in Hong Kong. Whether you created your own business, thinking about doing so, or simply curious to discover business creation stories, you'll get to listen to unique business owners' journeys, to learn what it takes to start a company, what the keys to success are, how to apprehend failures and challenges, and what to keep in mind when developing your own business. As an entrepreneur, one of your main focus is to sell your products or services. That's where marketing comes into play, especially digital marketing and social media. Do you know how much time we spend every day on social media? More than 2 hours. That's an opportunity to interact with your audience, reach new customers, and get more visibility. To find out more about how to leverage social media to grow your business, check out oak.genhk.com, the agency that helps business owners find their place on social media. Now let's move on to the episode. I hope it'll inspire you and guide you in your current or future projects. And don't forget to give me 5 stars to show me your support. Dear listeners, welcome to a new episode of Hong Kong Business Owners. I'm Carmen, entrepreneur and host of this podcast. And this morning I'm with Maura. Hi, Maura. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. So in 2009, you co-founded Sassy Media Group, a digital media company across Hong Kong and Singapore that creates coveted local content. So there are 2 brands, Sassy to share lifestyle content from bars and restaurants to events and special discount offers, and Sassy Mama, where parents can find what's hot in the world of parenting in Hong Kong and Singapore. So just a little thought I had. It's funny because I moved in Hong Kong almost 2 years ago. And when I got here, I didn't know the city. And I was curious to discover, new places, new restaurants, what to do, cool bars. And I came across Sassy's website on my first month in Hong Kong.
Hey.
And I thought, how funny now I'm recording an episode with you.
I have to say, I love hearing that because I vividly remember before moving to Hong Kong, sitting in my cubicle in New York City, trying to search anything about this new place I was moving to and finding some things that helped out. But obviously, we were inspired by kind of not finding so much out there at the time. And that's where Sassy started. But I love hearing stories like yourselves because I so much remember sitting in that cubicle, doing that search myself, and to know that other people are doing it and coming across the Sassy and Sassy Mama websites is just, it's what it's all about. Yeah. And I love it.
Yeah, I love it. I love this story. And it's a nice way to start the conversation. And it just makes me realize how much can happen in Hong Kong and how incredible things can happen here. If you're open to opportunities.
Exactly.
So when you arrived here, you were not an entrepreneur at the time. And you say about yourself that you're an accidental entrepreneur. I love that. Mm-hmm. So could you have predicted to be managing a successful company when you arrived from the US in a few years ago? And you started out as a hobby, and now it's a real business. So can you tell us a bit more about that?
Absolutely. I think the timing of when I moved to Hong Kong plays a little bit into the story. I think as you mentioned, when I was a little girl, I never had dreams of having my own business, being an entrepreneur. When I graduated university, I worked for a large company, a pharmaceutical company. I was specifically working in the data and analytics marketing area. But when I moved to Hong Kong in 2008, I have a very typical story in that I thought it would be 2 to 3 years. And I just started my life in Hong Kong, just kind of being open to possibilities. I was volunteering. I did yoga teacher training. but I do have a personality. I found out that I like to work. And when I realized that I like to work and I was getting a bit sad when everyone else was going to work on Monday morning, it happened to be right at the time of the financial crisis in 2008. So I was sending out my resumes and I was getting so many responses back saying, we're not hiring. Do you see what's happening at the moment? So I think in a way that did end up leading us to starting Sassy as a hobby and really trying to figure out kind of what to do with our time in Hong Kong. So I think, the reason why I'm even saying that is there's part of my life story that I never thought about starting a business. And so I very often say it's accidental in that I stumbled upon it. I think that I am a people pleaser. So if I were to really analyze it, I think I just always wanted to do a good job. And I think having that as part of my personality and wanting to do a good job, I think that absolutely helped me on my path of entrepreneurship, because as you know, it's a tough road. And I think just always having that in the back of my head, I want to do a good job. I want to put out something that people enjoy reading. I want to keep clients happy. I want to keep the people that are working for Sassy in jobs and being able to, continue to pay salaries. So I think I have a little bit of that in me. And then I think the accidental part, as you mentioned, it started as a hobby. So we started Sassy, myself and two friends, we started it because, we wanted just to create something where people could connect in Hong Kong. We were, all fairly new to living there a year in. And we also realized that, many of the people we met might be moving in and out of Hong Kong at various times. So it was really important for us to maintain friendships and make sure that we can, consistently had a group or a community to lean on, but then also at the same time, have a resource to be able to be up to date with what was happening around town. And so I think it's really nice in terms of the Sassy story that it was started as a hobby, and it was started with this really strong sense of community. We want to put something out there that people enjoy reading so that, when we are at a crossroads in terms of, the low parts of running a business, and this is really tough, it is really nice to be able to go back to that hobby / accidental aspect of the journey and just remember kind of what it was all about. But yes, this was never my life plan. And it's funny that I guess in a way keep using that word accidental entrepreneur, because it has been 14 years now. But I really connect with it. And I think it's just really meaningful in terms of kind of how I've just navigated through this path.
Yeah. Well, I like that it really started, organically. And actually, I think if you're passionate about what you do, usually, well, from the people I interviewed, the entrepreneurs I interviewed, usually they have something like a pain point that they're trying to solve, and they start a business. So then it makes sense that this business exists because it really solves something, I like that.
Absolutely. And I know maybe we'll speak to it a little later in terms of why we are doing this virtual, but it's so interesting to remember sitting in that cubicle, when I found out I was moving to Hong Kong and feeling like I needed a specific need, to then now, many years later, also realizing that that's coming back full circle and I'm needing that now in my life. So I think it's really nice to be able to start something in the way that we did, because it did help. It did help, us grow organically, or, kind of have that relatable vibe that's, so important to our brand as well.
Yeah. And as you started, like with your co-founders, how did you learn all of this? Because I read that you like to speak about how to grow a brand with limited funds, how to expand to new markets, Singapore, and be profitable, and how to build a team. But this is super valuable knowledge. And did you learn it along the way, or because you have a background in pharmaceutical, which is very different, but maybe you had skills from that time that you can apply now. Yeah.
So absolutely, from my perspective, learned it along the way. probably with some skill sets that I had in previous jobs. Obviously, I was able to, bring those along and, be able to work a spreadsheet and calculate formulas when we're maybe doing like the basic finance stuff that we did early in the day. And now we have experts to help us with that. But I always talk about a story that I think just defines what it was about in the early days and just the nature of having to do it all because you don't have the manpower or the funds to be able to have, an amazing team. We had our first team meeting, I remember, in my apartment at the time. And one of my business partners who we were really lucky, she is so talented in design. And so it was nice because we had that from, her bringing in that vision. But remember the three of us being, we said we had to write on the website. And I almost walked out of the meeting and said, no, this is not for me. I am not a writer. I can't do this. This is not my skill set. And thankfully I did not. But in the early days, I had to write on the website. So, what you see now, it comes from an amazing, talented group of writers. 15 years ago, it came from me who it's not my skill set, but I made it work. I tried really hard. And, obviously something stuck because people enjoyed what we were writing about. But in the early days, it really was all about pitching in together. And I remember we held each other accountable. And I am very lucky in that I'm able to say we so many times in this statement. I know it can be a lonely journey, being an entrepreneur of one. And I recognize the benefit that I had in terms of having business partners to bounce ideas around, and also to hold ourselves accountable. So I remember, we would say to the person, you didn't do your blog post today, and you did not want to get that, message from someone else. But again, going back to my personality, if I got that message, I probably would have done 2 the next day because I wanted to, make my team members happy. But we just learned as we went along. I remember another story I tend to say when someone asked us for our media kit in the early days because we were starting to get traction and businesses wanted to work with us. When we got that first email asking for our media kit, I then Googled, what is a media kit? We didn't know, and we didn't know how we were supposed to do things. So we just put things together. And I think the nice thing is, looking back, it actually makes us smile. And the rest of the office, I'll have to share it with them shortly. Like they'll have a giggle at our first media kit. It is in no way what it looks like today and the profession standards that we have today, but we put it out. And I think it's all about just, getting the momentum. But to answer your question, I didn't know much. We just kind of navigated through until we were able to have enough funds to be able to hire people that knew what they were doing. So I think in the early days, we weren't taking salaries. We were just trying to make it work, trying to create something successful. We saw that it had potential as a business. So we would then just reinvest funds that we had when we had them to then take it to the next level, which would be hiring, great editors or revamping our website to take it from, what we were using, which was super basic, to something that is a maybe tiny version of what you might see today. So we were really conservative with how we spent our money. And I think we also had pride in that. We, as a group, believed that you could create something. You didn't have to spend a lot of money. It wasn't about throwing tons of money at something and that equaled being successful. We really believed that there was something else to it. And when we had the money to then upgrade to the next level, like we did so, but I think we were really, we felt that was an important aspect of who we are. And it wasn't about who had the most money is going to win the race. It was, who, took things and were considerate with how they did it. I'm a firm believer in that approach, but also at the same time, I do go back and tell people who are starting out, don't be scared of spending money, spend it for the right reasons, but don't feel like you need tons of it to make something successful in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. I see it as investing money more than really spending it because it helps grow your business at some point. You can't do everything on your own.
As you mentioned, we are in Singapore as well. And when we launched our Sassy Mama brand in Singapore, it was a quite different story because we were already running the business in Hong Kong for a number of years, and we knew what we wanted to do, and we knew how we were going to make our revenue, and we knew what was needed to make it happen. So in the very early days, day one, we were hiring editors and we were hiring sales team members, and we were making sure that our website was what it needed to be. So that was when we had to spend the money, because we knew we didn't want it to be that slow growth. We wanted it to maintain kind of what we believe our roots should be, but we needed then quicker momentum, because we then had salaries to pay, like all of this stuff that was needed. So we needed to make sure that we were investing money quicker than we did in Hong Kong. So I sometimes say the Hong Kong story is this beautiful, lovely story. And maybe the Singapore one is also like the reality of like running a business from day one, and you're paying salaries and you need to make sure that the revenue is coming in as quickly as possible.
Yeah. You had more responsibilities when you
absolutely
expanded to Singapore. Actually, that was kind of a question I had about how did you expand to Singapore? Because, well, you started from a newsletter to a company with 2 brands, and then you expanded to Singapore. And also you told me that you're actually one of your business partners moved there in Singapore, and usually it's the other way around. Like usually it's the business wants to expand somewhere, and then business partners move there. But this time it's actually like super organic in a way again. So how did it go? How did you implement your business there? How did you adapt? Well, Hong Kong and Singapore are in many ways not so different in terms of, the markets, but still it's still another location. And I guess you had to adapt many things, many ways of working, like working with a remote team. How did you adapt the processes and all of this?
Yeah. So
and also you moved there.
Yeah. So I've just moved here in like late December 2023. So that's why we're doing this remotely. So that is, I guess, the ending part of the story. And going back to the beginning part of our Singapore journey, I remember vividly sitting in a coffee shop on Stanley Street in Hong Kong, talking about launching in Singapore. It was early days in Hong Kong. I remember us, looking to buy the domain then, and we did, and I'm thankful that we did. But then the reality of that conversation was it wasn't the right time for us to do anything in Singapore. At this point in time, none of us lived in Singapore. We had conversations, but we were still trying to make everything work in Hong Kong. And I think we realized that it would have been too much at that point in time to try to then launch something in Singapore. I'm very thankful that we did wait, because then I think maybe like a year or two later, 2 of my business partners ended up moving to Singapore. So Singapore was always something that was interesting to us. We thought that the brand would really work well there. Our first attempt, we realized, we needed to focus on making Hong Kong work. So we didn't do that. But then when 2 of my business partners found out separately within months of each other that they were moving to Singapore, it just felt like the absolute right time. So we were very thankful that we purchased that domain a few years earlier. And it was amazing. And I think what was so nice, like you said, it was organic, and it kind of brings back to that organic aspect that kind of floats through our brand in different definitions over time, right? Not everything can be organic the way it was like in 2008, but it was really nice because they landed here and they realized that the Sassy Mama brand would do really well here in Singapore. So they worked so hard in getting it up and running. And I'm, incredibly thankful for everything that they've built. And I told them the other day that it's amazing that, what they built in the amount of time, just upon moving here themselves, which is a huge feat, moving somewhere new, is absolutely incredible. And we just celebrated 10 years last year for Sassy Mama Singapore. So it's just been amazing to see the brand grow here. I think, to my point earlier, it was a bit different in that we did have to come here and land and, try to figure out how to make this work from a financial perspective, because we invested, money from our, Hong Kong business to make it work. And it's always been a very similar model. So that's, really nice in that, okay, this is working here. It's probably going to work here as well. But then we also have to recognize, there's also many differences between the two places. And so I think over the years, we've just really tried to figure out like how to keep a very similar model and mindset, but then just make sure that we're complementing where we are and kind of what the needs of each location may be. In terms of, the businesses, I think, both, everyone, we have, people working from home, and then sometimes, meetings in the office. Everyone kind of comes together once a week to have team meetings in the office. I think for myself, coming here, it was really hard for me to move, because I've been in Hong Kong for 15 years. We weren't planning to make a move. And, when we got the call about Singapore, it wasn't that we were not happy to be moving to Singapore. It was, we were sad to leave, a place that we called home for so many years. We've had two of our children, or I have two children, but we had our kids there. So that was really hard. But then I also was really excited about the possibility of being able to connect even more closely with the team here in Singapore, like I've been able to on the ground in Hong Kong. So that's been a really nice thing about, moving to Singapore and being connected to our team that's based here. But what I am really happy about is that, over the past 4 years since, we've had COVID, just being able to, sit here, and we're in two different locations and have, a lovely conversation with each other. It's really also allowed me to, it's not a hard goodbye in terms of seeing the Hong Kong team, in their weekly meeting, or, kind of being able to engage with them, like by looking at each other, in the eyes, like, whereas prior to, the COVID years, we weren't doing video calls like this all of the time. So I'm really thankful for the timing that I've been able to move, because I think, what we've built in Hong Kong is really special to me, and it's so nice to be able to still stay connected in that way.
Yeah, it's all about timing, and it seems like this was something important in the story. Like you thought about Singapore, and then a few years later, a business partner moved there, and it's really something as an entrepreneur I'm thinking about, like time and the right time to do something. And sometimes it's a mix of what you want to achieve, but also having the flexibility and the open-mindedness to go also with the flow, but controlling it, it's not totally like going with the flow and let's see. It's not like that, but it's a mix. And usually, from what I saw, my experience, if you follow this mindset, then it leads to things happening at the right time. I don't know if you know what I mean. It's like, not like karma, but something out there. Like if you put enough effort in, and you just don't want to rush things, and you aware and listen to people. Yes. Do you feel that too? It's difficult to explain.
Yeah, no, I totally agree in that sometimes it just feels like it's the right time. It's hard because I do agree. And then it's also on the flip side, it's like, but I also, you have to, you can sometimes be in such a paralyzed state of like, it needs to be the right conditions to do everything, and then nothing happens. So I love what you just described, and how our story goes, because it's allowing yourself to say yes to an opportunity, but also knowing that there's certain things that might need to feel right, or that you might need to have in place before those opportunities arise. It's not saying that when you say yes, everything's going to be perfect, right? So it's letting go of that mindset of, I can't take on an opportunity unless it's perfect, because we all know that's not how things work. So it's more of, I want to make sure that I have these areas that are feeling like they will survive enough, or I'll be able to make it work, so that when an opportunity comes, I can say yes, because yes, to my point earlier, it's not going to be perfect. So you're going to have, highs and lows along the way, and just making sure that you're able to stay open to possibilities when the timing is right, I think is what it's all about.
And sometimes sometimes you just have to say yes, and you're not ready for what's happening, but you just say yes, and then you try, and then usually it works out well.
Exactly. And if it doesn't work out, we've had, I think it's so nice to be able to talk about, all of the successes, and we're here and then we're in Singapore, and it's this beautiful organic story. But as I said, it's not all perfect. And there's often times of, every business's story where it's not perfect. We've tried license opportunities in other locations. We had Australia for a bit of time in Manila, and they were very exciting. And the teams there were amazing, but they just, for many reasons, didn't work out. And I think that it's important to also talk about some of that stuff sometimes, because what I've learned from those specific situations is that our team also in that moment was still very small, and we were trying to really focus all of our time and energy on making what was bringing us, the money at the time work. So we weren't able to focus on maybe some other things that we were needing to kind of grow and pay attention to. So, sometimes it's the right decisions, but not at the right time, so that when the right time comes, you actually know what's needed in that moment, because maybe it's what wasn't given the first time around. And I really like thinking in that way as well.
And you seem to believe very much in individuals, in the people you work with, that they all have specific skills to bring to the table, and humility seems to be a value close to your heart, and that you apply as a business owner. So my question is, what does humility bring you, your team, your business? And do you think maybe more business owners should benefit from this great quality, humility?
Well, I love.
I don't have anyone in mind.
But I love you recognizing that, because it makes me smile. And I think it's just who I want to present myself to be. And so it's nice maybe for that to come through. I think, as I said earlier, I am a big believer in being vulnerable. I think when I started this, I was Googling what is a media kit. I think people can get caught up with they're supposed to know everything, and then that can put a facade on that it's, a suit of armor in a way that it's like, I know everything. I know how this is supposed to be. And I am a believer that it's okay to not know it all. It's okay to be vulnerable. And I think that by showing that, I'd also, want people on the team or people that we work with just to see the Sassy brand as a genuine brand, a brand that people can relate to. And I think when maybe you have certain aspects of humility, people relate to that, because, if you're able to take down your walls in certain aspects, people say, oh, that's similar to me in a way. I think that, and I don't know if this is a unique characteristic for an entrepreneur or not. I don't believe it's a unique characteristic. I think it's just a characteristic that some may have and some may not. I don't know. But I don't think I have a huge ego in how this should all play out. As an example, I don't need to be in a specific role within the business. I am happy to, be able to step aside if I'm realizing that a specific role needs more than I can give, whether that's more than I can give in terms of my skill set, more than I can give in that very moment of my life. And I think it's really important for people to see that and to recognize that it's okay to be able to say, this isn't me. And, we figure out where everyone works the best together. So I think it is a really important trait that I like to have. And, if that can be recognized within our business, then that also would make me happy.
Hopefully it'll inspire other entrepreneurs. And going back to your company in Hong Kong, do you think launching your company in Hong Kong was an asset in terms of growth? And do you think it grew faster than if you'd have started, I don't know, in the US? And I'd just like to know your perspective on why Hong Kong is a good place to start a business.
Love the question, because I feel like you're bringing me such down memory lane today with this question, because from day one, I have always said that I'm so thankful that we launched this brand in Hong Kong. I moved from New York City, so I always use that as an example. I think that the people of Hong Kong were so welcoming to us as a brand. The vibe that we had in the early days when we were growing, when we were not a name anyone knew, when we had probably ourselves and our parents and siblings on our mailing list, people gave us a chance. I remember in the very early days of starting the business, as I mentioned earlier, we used to have happy hour events. And I remember us walking into bars, talking to them, saying, we want to have a happy hour. We want to have a welcome. We want these things. And people were willing to give it a go. They're willing to give us a chance. They're willing to open the doors and see whether it would work for them as a business and see whether it would work for us. And I'm just always so thankful to all of the people that we worked with in those very kind of early months of starting Sassy, that they just said, sure, why not? I think in many other places that would have been difficult. I think there's probably more competition. And I think that we were in the place, we were starting something. There were other people doing things that were similar. It wasn't like we were like the only group that was doing something, but there weren't so many of us that people were able to say, sure, let's take a chance. And I just have always been in awe of that. And I think that's it's also a nice thing to remember as you're, growing and you see something. It's not all about how big you are. It's maybe what you see in the people that are bringing you an idea and whether you think that they're going to work hard to make it work. Right. And I think that we were really fortunate to come across a lot of people in the early days that did that. And I'm forever thankful to them.
Yeah, I think generally, like overall, people here in Hong Kong are quite open to new ideas, businesses. Even with this podcast, I'm surprised in a good way how people are open to it. Yeah. Here,
and I think and I think a lot of people too might remember, and that's what's really nice. If you had that when you were starting out, then you also want to remember that and, be able to kind of, pass that on. And I definitely feel that was the energy that we received. And, if we can do that in return, obviously, in various ways, obviously everyone has a business to run, right? So you have to be, kind of thinking about how it all works. But it's been amazing.
Yeah. Giving back is, and on top of being an entrepreneur, you're also a mom. So you mentioned you had 2 kids. You have 2 kids. How was that big transition? How do you balance out your different roles? Because it seems that another element to approach to handle that transition and challenges also in general is to be kind to yourself, to give yourself room to slow down, to think, to make mistakes, to learn. So in a way, exactly how you'd behave toward, with a friend. And sometimes we so mean to ourselves and we don't let ourselves, make mistakes and have enough space. And it seems to be a good way to preserve your mental health and balance out everything you have to handle in your life. So how did you go through that?
Well, first off, I was very lucky before I had my children that I had an amazing resource in Sassy Mama available to me. So I was the one who was still being Sassy. My, business partners had kids. So that was obviously how Sassy Mama came to life. But it was really nice when I became pregnant. I was like, amazing. I have years worth of content on the site. I I will know it all because it's all right there. Well, that's not the reality of the situation. Yes, there's so much content that is so helpful to parents in Hong Kong or Singapore on the Sassy Mama site, but everyone's individual parenting journey can be whatever it is. So I am thankful that content was there, and I also had a great resource of team members who are also moms and navigating through what that looks like. I remember specifically one of my business partners when I was about to have my daughter, and I was putting so much time and energy into growing Sassy. She said, "You don't know what it will be like when the baby is in your arms," because I was like, do mat leave and then I'll come back and it'll look like this. And she said, "You will not know." And at the time I didn't understand what she was saying. And then I had the baby in my arms and I was like, I get it now. So it's, I think in terms of running a business and being a mom, I think in many aspects, the running the business part, it does come with some flexibility in that you're able to kind of like navigate what that looks like. So I am saying that and realizing that there is that beneficial part of it. But in the beginning, it was hard. I was working a lot more than I did with, when I had my second child. And what I've learned over the years, and it took me some time to learn this, is I was always like trying to find the balance and what the right balance. And, over the years, I've been like kind of ramping up and ramping down in terms of my involvement in the business. And like you were saying earlier, you can be hard on yourself. And, I remember days where, I was just so hard on myself if I, came home late, and I was, in the office, meeting with the team, and I came home late and I missed the bedtime. Like that was just really disappointing, right? In that moment. But then, I took some time and I took a step back and realized it's not about that one day. It's not about that one day in that, the team got more out of me than my daughter did at bedtime, because, the next day my daughter got more out of me than the team did. And so for me, it was all about looking at it from the perspective of, within a certain time period that I define for myself. So whether that's like a month or a week, like as long as I'm feeling okay with how that balance like ended, then I'm okay. If I feel at the end of that time period that, I needed to shift in this next run, then I do it. So I think also just like, it's not just a test on one day. It's there's more the next day. And if you weren't happy with how it played out, like just keep playing with that a little bit, because just, I don't think, you can have that easy balance in one particular day. And I think we need to be kind to ourselves. And I think you also need to be okay to trust what you need in that point of time, in that season of your life. I think that for me, I'm so committed to the brand that at times I think I took longer to notate when I needed to take steps back because I didn't want to let anyone down. And when you get into that sort of rhythm, you then, not to say you're letting people down, but you kind of, no one's really winning in that scenario. So I think, also being honest with what you need, in certain times, certain seasons of your life, like, and just running with it, and knowing that if you're conscious, the balance will be okay. Might not ever be even, but it will be okay if you're conscious of it. That's just kind of how I tend to look at it.
Yeah. One day at a time. You're not you just do your best, and then I guess that's enough. And that's really good. I mean,
I think also like, when it comes to being a parent, like we're also very hard on ourselves, and, kids just, they're happy to see you. And, they might not even be thinking about all of the minutia that you're thinking about that led up that maybe didn't make you feel like the best parent. Like, and I think sometimes easier said than done. And I'm not saying I do this all the time, but just letting things like sit in one place for the next day and then be present in the moment in both, in both aspects. But it's hard. It's hard. It's extremely hard.
I guess it is.
Yes. And it's, I think it's voicing that, right? It's being vulnerable and saying, I didn't get it right today. To allow someone else to feel that it's okay as well. because I think, if we don't say things, and everyone's being hard on themselves individually, quietly. And I think sharing the highs and the lows are super important in life.
I agree. Yeah. And then back to Sassy, what's your next big achievement and how are you going to reach it?
So
big question.
Yes, really big question. Then you're like, what is it? And I think for me, when I get this question, sometimes I'm like, what is the next big idea? Like, we need to figure this out in the 5 minutes because I'm going to go. And I don't think it's about that. I think that it's about, sometimes a simple answer actually is the most achievable. And it's actually sometimes what's needed the most. So I think when I think of this question, it's really, we're big on, like I've said, our roots, right? Like how we started. And, I'm very proud of the Sassy story and what we're all about and what we wanted to achieve and how we got there. So I think for us, in terms of, that path is, making sure that every time that we're in that crossroads, going back to the beginning, why did we start? Who are we doing this for? We're doing this for our readers to, whether they're sitting in a cubicle somewhere across the world or they're sitting at their desk in Hong Kong looking for the next place to go to dinner on Friday night. Like, are we able to answer that for them? Are we able to make them happy and feel like they're able to relate to us as a brand? Along with that core of who we are, like that never leaves us, but at the same time, we're picking up like the new things that are happening in the market and staying relevant and staying kind of modern with the times. So I think for that, it's like never letting go of who we are, but then also layering on our brand, new things that are happening in the industry and making sure that that's kind of then just added onto the train of like who we are and what we become. So I think it's just really focusing on those two areas.
And do you have in mind the idea of expanding even more to other countries?
Very good question. A few years ago, I would answer very quickly no to that. But over, and going back to like, you kind of, ease into a certain thing. And now I'm open to, new possibilities. We'll see what happens. But it's not something that we're constantly seeking. It's, kind of making sure that it feels right and there's thought behind it. And we feel like that we're in a good place within our businesses here to be able to launch into something new. So a few years ago, flat out no. Now it's no, but open to possibilities. Like, let's see.
Let's see the right time. We were talking about the right time.
Yes.
All right. Now, last question already. Last question is, do you have any, well, you kind of already answered that because you talk about all the things you learned throughout your journey as an entrepreneur, but is there any tips or any lessons that you learned and you'd like to share with other entrepreneurs or maybe people who are aspiring to be entrepreneurs?
I think a few things. I think it's you don't have to stay on one path for your whole life. I think going back to the very beginning of our chat, the whole accidental entrepreneur, I never thought that my path would end up where it is. So I think it's being open to possibilities and not being afraid of taking a chance. I think going hand in hand with that is also, being open with any questions you have. You're going to get somewhere quicker if you are honest with what you don't know. I think when I think back to starting out, I sometimes got into a bit of a hole of everyone else knows this. I'm the only one that doesn't know it. So I'm too scared to ask the question. And that meant, I wasted so much time on something that could have been an easy question to someone else and who said, oh, yes, I've navigated. This is how you do it. So I think for people that are starting out, ask the questions. You're not supposed to know everything. And find someone who is able to be vulnerable about the highs and lows of entrepreneurship. It's beautiful to hear, the great stories, but You're really going to grow by finding someone who's navigated like hard times and got to the other end of it, because, you know, no one wants to navigate hard times, but it's the reality of running a business or just having life in general. And just to find someone that's open and able to help you along the way is so valuable. I'm a member of, you know, many of an entrepreneur community and women's entrepreneur network, and it's just been so helpful to get those Me Too moments from people.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
It's important.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. And well, this is also part of the reasons why I started this podcast.
Agree. And I love that you're doing this, because it's really just about connecting people and making people feel less alone in their journey. And I think what you're doing is absolutely amazing. So congratulations.
Thank you so much.
That you've done.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, that's a nice conclusion to our conversation. Thank you so much for your time, for your input, for your sharing your story. I think it'll be inspiring to our listeners. It was to me. So if the listeners want to be part of the Sassy and Sassy Mama community, where should they go?
So you can visit our website. So we have Sassy Hong Kong in Hong Kong and Sassy Mama Hong Kong. Well, both in Hong Kong, Sassy Hong Kong and Sassy Mama Hong Kong. You can visit our websites. We're also on Instagram and Facebook. And then in Singapore, we also have our website, Instagram and Facebook. And we're just connecting with everyone in different ways on all three of those channels. So we just encourage everyone to join all three. And we're just all about sharing amazing content and helping everyone navigate life in Hong Kong and Singapore.
Cool. I'll add all the links in the description.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Take care.
I hope you're inspired by today's business story. And if you're thinking about running your own business, you might now be one step closer to doing so. If you own a business and you're looking to get more visibility and reach new customers, try the social media pack from Octogen, a monthly retainer to grow your business through social media marketing and optimization. Check out octogenhk.com, the agency that helps business owners find their place on social media. See you in 2 weeks to meet a new Hong Kong business owner, and don't forget to leave me 5 stars to support me and follow me on Instagram at hk.businessowners. Bye!